Continuing the formation of the Avesta, there are two passages in the Vendidad which seem to contain internal evidences of their date, and in both cases it points to Sassanian times, nay, the second of them points to the age of Manichaeism. The first is found in the 18th Fargard. Ahura Mazda, while cursing those who teach a wrong law, exclaims, "And he who would set that man at liberty, when bound in prison, does no better deed than if he should flay a man alive and cut off his head." This anathema indicates a time when Mazdaism was a state religion and had to fight against heresy. Well, had to, look what happened with the Qadiani, the Ahmadiyya. Some of these groups get as big as they are because they're, other than just talked against, they're fought, and people think, well, they actually have something worth defending as far as their beliefs and stuff. It must, therefore, belong to Sassanian times. These lines are fully illustrated by a Parsi book of the same period, the Ma'inyo Iqard. Good government is that which maintains and orders the true law and customs of the city people and poor untroubled, and thrust out improper law and custom, and keeps in progress the worship of God and duties and good works, and will resign the body, and also that which is its own life, for the sake of the good religion of the Mazdayasnians. And if there is anyone who shall stay away from the way of God, then it orders him to return thereto, and makes him a prisoner, and brings him back into the way of God, and will bestow from the wealth that is his the share of God and the worthy and good works, and the poor, and will deliver up the body on account of the soul. A good king who is of that sort is called, like the Yazads and the Ameshaspends. What doctrines are alluded to by the Vendidad is not explained. It appears in the context that it had in view such sects as released the faithful from the yoke of religious practices, as it anathematizes at the same time those who have continued for 3 years without wearing the sacred girdle. We know too little of the Manichaean liturgy to guess if the Manichaeans are here alluded to, that Mani should have rejected many Zoroastrian practices is not unlikely, as his aim was to found a universal religion, while he pushed to extremes several of the Zoroastrian tenets, especially those of which had taken or might receive a moral or metaphysical meaning. He must have been very regardless of practices which could not be ennobled into moral symbolism. However it may be with regard to the foregoing passage, it is difficult not to see a direct allusion to Manichaeism in lines like the following from 447. "Verily I say unto thee, O Spitama Zarathustra, the man who is a wife is far above him who begets no sons. He who keeps a house is far above him who has none. He who has children is far above the childless man. He who has riches is far above him who has none. And of two men, he who fills himself with meat is filled with the good spirit, much more than he who does not so. The latter is all but dead. The former is above him by the worth of an asperena, by the worth of a sheep, by the worth of an ox, by the worth of a man. It is this man that can strive against the onset of asto vidotu, that can strive against the self-moving arrow, that can strive against the winter fiend with thinnest garment on, that can strive against the wicked tyrant and smite him on the head. It is this man that can strive against the ungodly Ashma-oga, who does not eat. Ashma-oga is the confounder of Asha, from Ashma, sort of like Shrosha Oga, but the demonic side, right? Rather than the obedience, the wrathful side. It is the name of the fiends and of the heretics. The Parsis distinguish two sorts of Ashma Ogas, the deceiver and the deceived. The deceiver, while alive, is Margarzan, worthy of death, according to 41. And after death is a Darvand, a fiend, or one of the damned. The deceived one is only a Margarzan. The Pahlavi translation illustrates the words, the part that says, who does not eat, who does not, by the gloss, like Mazdak, son of Bamdad, which proves that this point of the commentary is posterior to or contemporary with the crushing of the Mazdakian sect, in the first years of Khosrav and Osarvan, about 531. The words against the wicked tyrant are explained by the gloss like Zarvandad. It may be Kobad, the heretic king, or Yazdgard, the sinner, the scorner of the Magi. Now let's remember that some things, rather than groups, there's types of people, and it was known that there'd be types of people, and they were responding to them, that this is a bit of religious polemics, and that it refers to definitive doctrines but tenets which were held at the time when it was written can hardly be doubted. It may be reminded one of the Christian doctrines, and in fact it was nearly in the same tone with the expressions that in the 5th century King Yazdgard branded the Christians in Armenia. But however eager the Christian propaganda may have been for a time in Persia, they never endangered the state religion. The real enemy was the heresy sprung from Mazdaism itself, and Christianity coming from abroad was more of a political than a religious foe. In point of fact, the description in the passage agrees better with the Anakian doctrines than with the Christian. Like many Christian teachers, held the single life holier than the state of matrimony, yet they had not forbidden marriage, which many did. They put poor Lazarus above the Dives, but they never forbid trade and husbandry, which many did. And lastly, they never prohibited the eating of flesh, which was one of the chief precepts of many. We find, therefore, in this passage, an illustration from the Avesta itself and the celebrated doctrine of the 3 seals with which many had sealed the bosom, the hand, and the mouth of the disciples. Gaculum sinus manus aureus. 11. We must go now a further step back and try to solve the question whence came the original text out of which the editors of the Avesta formed their collection. And, that's a big note. I'll have to, setting aside the Dinkart, we have no original document to help us tracing them through the age of the Arsakites, a complete historical desert.